I was looking at the paintings, mostly your father's.
Well, I mean, there are hardly any walls, so yeah, this is actually a print. Those are very old, small ones that I had.
Yeah.
I haven't brought any proper works from Delhi.
Okay. And this is a this is a
Yeah, it's a graphic. I mean, it's not just a print, it's a
Hmm.
graphic.
Hmm.
So, yeah, but it's not an fully original watercolor. It's
You
that.
grew up surrounded by artists.
Yeah.
Your mother was a writer. Your
Is it?
is a writer. Your father a painter. Did anyone consciously teach you to think or question or critically analyze things? Or do you think it's a natural outcome of the environment that you got?
Yeah, I don't think, at that time parents also weren't thinking about parenting. Like it wasn't the same as now. We are so much more conscious of it. We are reading up and we are saying, okay, what is the psychological impact and all of that. At that time, we were just kind of growing. But the atmosphere at home and the places we went to were obviously artistic, full of books. Our mother used to work at the National Book Trust. So she would take me to the World Book Fair and I would go and, after school, there was no nanny concept at the time. So, we are being dragged, my brother and I, wherever our parents were going. And, my father would go to all these other artists' homes. They would stay up late, they would be drinking, smoking, listening to Hindustani classical music, and we would just sleep in some corner of the house. So I think just having the freedom to question, freedom to ask, freedom to be, uh, before even I knew the isms, feminism and secularism and all of that, it was being practiced all around me. And I'm very grateful for that childhood where all of this was so natural. It's only later that I realized that maybe this was a slightly unconventional upbringing. And I often say this that, the fact that my mother used to go to work and my father, I thought, cooks, cleans, and for recreation paints. So that role reversal happened very early on, which was also very good for me. But at that time, there was no intellectualization of all of this.
And because you were exposed to all kinds of media, painting, music, literature, theater, film,
Right.
so the choice of acting, maybe it started with Jannatyam Manch. How did that come about?
It wasn't even a choice. I mean, I did join Jannat Manch with Safdar Hashmi and the group when I was in last year of my school. One of my classmates was, now he's running it, Sudhanba Deshpande. So he told me about it. And at the time, it was just like a fun thing, like you do school plays and, and more than just the theater aspect of it, the idea of developing a play about issues that I didn't know so much about, whether it was about workers' rights, factory workers' rights, whether it was about secularism, whether it was about women, gender issues, about dowry. These were issues that you read about in the papers. They weren't sort of real enough for me at the time. You're 17, 18, you don't know that much, you're very idealistic. So I think just getting to know about these issues through the way we had a whole improvisation and a method through which Sabdar would get us all together. He would get an expert to talk to us about these issues. And we would go into offices, we would go into slums, we would go into bastis, we would going to just like literally nukkars, at this age, just crossroads and perform and meet the people who were, for whom this was not an issue. This was their life. This were these struggles, these themes were things that they were living every day. So I think it was that experience of being exposed to all of this was what was actually more exciting than just sort of performing and the joy of performance. That was also fun.
Yeah.
But even at the time, I never thought I would be an actor. In fact, Safdar used to always tell me that you should join NSD and you're a good actor. You should pursue acting. I was like, no, I don't want to be an actor. So
But
it
why
was
not?
much later. I don't know. I never wanted to be part of films or theater as a profession. I'd never thought of it. I, in fact, went on to doing my graduation in geography, took a year off, taught at Rishi Valley, the school where my brother used to study here, J. Krishnamurti School, then traveled around, did various things, and I realized what I really would like to do is to do a postgrad in social work. So I did a post-graduation in that, and I mean, it's not about the degree, but it just again exposed me to so many different realities. that I started then working with an NGO and then another NGO. So I was quite happy doing work with, about women on education, with adolescent girls. That was my world. And I literally sort of stumbled upon acting with Fire. And yeah, and then I started getting other roles and other films. And I never grew up with mainstream cinema because my parents never watched films. So I somehow just never, I missed this whole pop culture exposure and therefore never really watched it. Or so there was no question of having a desire sort of to be part of it. So it was all very organic in some ways.
And do those days still live on with you to interact with people like Safdar Hashmi, Habib Tanveer, the Janam days? Do they still live on within you today, or have you outgrown them?
You never outgrow that. I think, your experiences are what makes you, and it's not a conscious thing. Only these interviews make you realize and you think about things, and some of it I've repeated like 100 times, and some of them, if you've seen it already, sorry, but it's the same life, so I can't change it. I can't change my answers. But yeah, I mean, I think all of that subconsciously informs your choices. For sure, I think my choices in films is definitely a testament to my experiences before I came into films. And yeah, and for me, films always kind of remained an interest. It never fully, I mean, I was known as an actor, then filmmaker now, both. But for me, it was always like an interest. It was always a means to an end. That it allows me to talk about things I care for. It allows me to express myself in different creative ways. And I'm not a trained actor or a director or a producer or a writer, and I'm doing all of them and, sort of learning on the job and hopefully growing with each of the projects. And yeah, so it's like it's constantly sort of it's a very fluid kind of a unplanned journey, and I have no idea like where it's going and what. Every time I do something, let's say if I'm doing a film, then other things recede, and that sort of takes precedence. When there isn't a film, then a lot of my social advocacy, I do a little bit of acting, I do a little bit of writing. So it's sort of all of it is, I guess, me. I mean, that's why I felt a need to kind of specialize, or, I really feel specialization is sort of overrated in our heads, that you have to sort of excel in something. And, I genuinely like doing different things and exploring different things. And luckily, that's how life has sort of been.
So, in your head, films and your social advocacy work, your activism, all of that is one thing? Or
I mean, they're different. Their means, the way they manifest may be different, but for me, they are not like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with this, My film is also a kind of a social advocacy, because through my films, I'm talking about things that I care for, whether it's as an actor, whether it's as a director, as a producer, as a writer. So all of that, I think, is similar. And what I've learned through my social work days and then social advocacy days, it also allows me to meet a cross section of people. And as filmmakers, as storytellers, where do you get your inspiration? You can't look around and say, I'm going to observe this person, or I'm going to observe this life, or, or you're reading something from the papers. All that has its own place, but it can only happen if you have sort of genuinely and deeply kind of taken in and internalized, and it has found its own way in which it comes out. I mean, otherwise, what is really original? Original is everything has been said, everything has been done. What is original?
Copy.
Yeah, but everything that's original is, I think, how you internalize it genuinely and how you find a way to tell that in your own words or in your own images or in your own way. I mean, only there can you have that glimpse of maybe yourself and how you think.
And to talk about your initial acting years, of course, Fire comes up most prominently. Was there ever any realization amongst all of you who were in the process of making the film that it was going to be so path-breaking?
Not really. I mean, when you're doing it, you don't realize. Neither did we know that it was going to be such a landmark film, nor did we know that there was going to be such an uproar against it. We, of course, thought that this is a bit of an unconventional subject. Definitely, there are going to be people who are going to raise their eyebrows and there's going to be criticism. We, in fact, thought there was going to be censorship, and of course, they're going to cut off a few scenes, a few dialogues, whatever. But it was a landmark decision by the censor board. I mean, I can't even imagine that, not a single cut was asked for. So we didn't realize that some people who are the self-proclaimed custodians of culture are going to come and attack it. And then, there's going to be such an uproar. And then there's going to be such a response to that also, because lots of people, lots of, students and journalists and professionals also took to the streets and started talking about freedom of expression and sort of really supporting the film. They said, we don't know whether the film is good or bad. Some of them had seen it, some of them had not, but it wasn't about just that. It was about this freedom of expression and freedom to be able to watch what you want to watch. So, in that sense, it became a landmark film for various reasons. And I think even in the whole LGBTQ movement, it played a very significant part because it suddenly gave us a vocabulary to talk about it. I mean, what was it, 96 when I shot it? So it's like 20 or 29 years ago.
Yeah.
There was no word, I mean, there was no phrase like an LGBTQ, AI plus or anything. It used to be heterosexual and homosexual. And all kinds of responses one would get. And I think personally, my own growth has happened a lot because of that film, because I also got to know how people perceive, how the othering happens, how deeply prejudiced we are about anything that's different from us, how judgmental we can be, how hurtful we can be, because so many people told me also stories of their own lives, which otherwise I don't think I would have ever known. So my own sensitivity, of course, to the issue itself, but also to any form of prejudice, to any form of othering. And somehow that became a refrain in my own work. Like, that was something that I wanted to explore more, Why do we discriminate? Why are we prejudiced? What does fear feel like? So whether it was Firak, whether it was Manto, whether it was Vigato, if you see all the films that I've directed, my short films, or even my acting work thereafter, kind of explored, those issues. Yeah.
When we talk about personal growth, all your acting films, as most of them, they deal with some very specific political or social issues like Hazar Chaurasi Ki Maa, the Naxalite movement, or Hari Bhari, infertility. There was this other film I watched a long time back, Ek Alag Mausam.
About AIDS.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all of them deal with some, I wouldn't say just a social issue, because sometimes people perceive me as this, hot social type films here, bada sa message hai, and that must be boring and that must be high-handed, it must be intellectual. It doesn't have to be. I feel like a film not has to, but the kind of film that I want to do, I feel like it has to have a social conscience. Just a conscience, which means that you will not endorse anything that's regressive. You would not try to put down any community or anything, but you will also celebrate freedom. You will not be judgmental. And films are such a powerful medium, and it's such an expensive medium. It's like so many people come together and so much of time, money, energy, talent goes into it. I feel like, why waste it? Why not do something that maybe can trigger some kind of a thought around it? It can create some empathy for a character that you may otherwise never know anything about. It would stir your mind in some way, move you to feel things about it. So I think, for me, that's why I said it's a means to an end. And that's why every film, I would say every film, which is a big statement to me because I've done about 40 odd films as an actor. But not all of them are great. And, sometimes you come to the set and you realize that, oh, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
But as an actor, you can only read the script, you meet the person, you don't really know how it's all going to come together. And I've done a lot of debut films, like of debut directors, And some of them have been really amazing experiences because they bring so much of that genuine passion and commitment to their first project. So it's also been great, but sometimes there's no way to know. Sometimes somebody could have done work earlier and still this film doesn't turn out the way you imagine it to be. But at least you have the solace that you've done it for the right reasons.
The intent.
The intent at least was to be part of something that is trying to say something that resonates with you. So in that sense, I think every film that I've done has had at least a conscience, So yeah, and that definitely when you direct it, then it's a much more, like all your intent and all your desire, your passion, your interest, your concern, everything kind of comes together.
The first time I saw you on screen was a Bangla film, Shubho Mohorar.
Okay. Yeah.
Very, very sweet film, as your role was also a very sweet one. But
it's fine.
You were working across multiple languages. How were you navigating through all the cultural context and also the learning of the languages themselves?
Yeah, I mean, when I did one or two films in Bombay, like, the Hindi films in Mumbai, as we call it today, I realized that this wasn't for me. The ones that for me were a little more mainstream, but for them, they were hatke. Whether it was Mahesh Manjrekar's Pita with Sanjay Dutt and Jackie Shroff and all of that, or whether it was with Mr. Bachchan, Aks. So it's not only about the story and all of that, but just the way at the time the industry was operating, the kind of hierarchy that was inherent in it. And I was at the top end of the hierarchy, playing the lead of the, of the film, a female lead. So there's always, you're treated differently. And, I'd come from a social work background where everything was about equality and egalitarian being. And then suddenly you feel like, oh, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. Yeah. Like, you are in the sun, you're standing with a chhata with your shoes, and all the junior artists are standing, the feet burning, no chhata. And, that just one example, but there are 100 other such examples. So I realized that the regional films at the time, and I'm not talking about the mainstream Telugu or the mainstream Tamil, they still had a mainstream even back then. But most of his other language films, the more independent films, they could afford to be more honest, more committed, more independent, really. Because they were often taking from literature they're working with very small budgets. They would take a lot of local talent. So it was a fabulous experience. You didn't have vanity vans or anything. You would sit under a tree. Everybody would eat together. It was the same food for the spot boy and the director and the actor. I felt much more at home in those settings. And yes, language was a huge challenge, especially the languages that I did know, the South Indian languages like Tamil and Malayalam and Kannada and Telugu and all of that. But I always enjoyed languages. My mother is Gujarati, my father is Odia. Into Shobai Bhabe je ami Bahali. So everyone, so many Bengalis come to me and say, Ami Awai. And then I have to tell them, Kintu Ami Nai. So I've been called a Bengali all my life. But I learned Bangla through just talking to friends, doing a few Bangla films. And so I did have a little bit of a flair for languages. I think I inherited from both my parents who speak multiple languages. And I thought, okay, let me try. But every time I did a film in a language that I didn't know, I swore I will never do it again. It was like an exam. In between shots, everyone's chatting, eating, laughing, and I'm sort of sitting with my next scene ka dialogue and learning them. But no regrets at all, because I think some of my best work is actually in other languages, films that most people haven't seen other than in that particular state. But those experiences, again, nobody can take away from you. So whether it was working with Adur Gopalakrishnan in Malayalam, or Jairaj also in Malayalam, or Mani Ratnam in Tamil, or, a film in Kannada, a debut film actually of Kavita Lankesh. There's a film called Deviri, which I thoroughly enjoyed, or it's a Telugu film, so all those experiences, I think, gave me so much as a person. Because you go into places that you would normally never go. These are not tourist places. you're going into some far off village and meeting local people, local talent, just being sort of part of that, eating local food those were delightful experiences. I mean, now I think my memories, I'm aging and my memory is really failing me. I did a Telugu film recently and I died, and I told myself, I really have to swear I'm not going to do another. I'm not going to learn more lines in languages that I don't understand. But yeah, I mean, I've done in 10 different languages and I've enjoyed each of those.
Could you talk about your memories of working with Mrinal Sen on his last film?
Of course, my name Mrinal. I was very close to Mrinalda, much before even I did Amar Bhuvan in 2004, maybe. Don't remember the exact year, but around that time. And I used to always tell him that I really want to work with you. And then suddenly when he called me, and I remember every time I went to Kolkata, I had 3 old men that I had to meet.
Okay.
One was Mrinalda, then one was Topanda.
Okay.
And there was another person called Shomi Mukherjee, who is not a film person, but he was kind of bedridden. He had he was a polio patient, but vibrant and full of life. And, it started as a pen pal. Like, he used to keep writing letters to me.
Oh.
And that time there was no, on these inlands and postcards and all that. And one fine day, I just reached his house and I was like, I want to see this person who's writing. And he used to write in such beautiful handwriting. I was like, this is a woman's handwriting. There's no way this can be a man's handwriting. And of course, it was his lovely wife, Anita Di, who's, they became like also friends for life. And so these 3 das that I used to meet in Kolkata, this was my ritual. And it was very sad when Topanda passed away. And I remember I invited him for Firak in 2008. I don't know which year he passed away, but around that time. And to Mrinaldas and, and Geeta Bodhi, like she was Geeta Di, I used to call her. But so yeah, just many times that I would go there. So when we did the film, it was in Taki in Chobbish Pargana. And it was a small village, and we had a guest house where only Mrinalda, me, the cinematographer, Abhik Mukhopadhyay, and the 2 actors, Kaushik and Shashwat, we all used to stay there. And it was right on the riverfront, and Ichamati river used to flow, and east was, across the river. So Mrinalda would say that the sun rises in Bangladesh and sets in India. And he was just such a vibrant, loving, funny. My God, he was truly the funniest person I've worked with. He had a great sense of humor, and in the whole village, from little children to old people, everybody he was like the Pied Piper. Like, wherever he would go, all these people would just follow, and he would joke around with them, and and it was such a relaxed shoot because he would also, because we were very close to the east, so the sunset would be very early. Like by 5 o'clock, it was almost dark. So we had a very short day. We didn't start too early because he didn't want to start too early. So we had a very short shooting day. And I had just come from Maniratnam's shoot of a film called Kannathil Muttamittal. Peck on the Cheek is the English translation. A wonderful film about adoption in Sri Lanka and the Tamil movement, etc. But he was like like a hard taskmaster from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it was like, just go on. So from that shoot to this, Mrinalda is like easy going, and every day he would say, "Acha mach ta kirokom banabo ajke," and which fish, and there would be this conversation about what. And yeah, it was very, very seamless, and he had a way that you could never really tell that he's he's actually directing or he's teaching. It was just very, it would float, or like, I don't know how to say it. It was just very subconsciously, or not even subconsciously, how do you say that? Like, very effortlessly, that he would just guide the actors or whoever was working. And there was a mix of local actors, some village people, often that happens also in films that are set in villages or more independent films. And it's a lovely mix of different actors with different exposures. So yeah, it was a delightful shoot. And every day when we would go back to the guest house, the first call would be to Geeta Di, and then he would give the whole sort of, lowdown of the day. And then he would make me also speak to Geeta Di, and then I would speak to Geeta Di, and she would say, please don't listen to him. You must be tired. Go to your room and rest. You don't have to indulge him and you don't have to be nice to him. And they had such a sweet banter, and we would just sit around and listen to his stories. He was a man of stories. And he would talk about his childhood. He would talk about his son when he was small. He would talk about his films. He would talk about, the Bengali actors like Soumitra Da and Uttam Kumar stories. And he would talk about Manik Da and, Ritik Ghatak. And like, he was just full of stories, and we would all just sort of sit there like students listening to him. So that was a very precious memory. And, his passing away was a big loss to me personally as well.
It's giving me goosebumps. Listen. So you worked with all these legendary filmmakers, Mrinal Sen, Govind Nihalani, Shyam Benegal. Your Adur Gopalakrishnan, your filmography would be any actor's dream. So do you think watching these people work from up close, did that play a role in you also wanting to become a filmmaker someday?
I mean, at the time when I was working, I didn't think of being a filmmaker, or, those thoughts were really not there. I started working on Firak, my first film, only in 2005.
Yeah.
I did do some shorts like public service ads in 2003 and 4. But when you're working, also when you're actually immersed, you don't think about all of that. Like, it's like watching a film. When I'm actually, if I really like the film, I don't look at it as an actor or as a filmmaker or anything. Later, maybe in retrospect, you can, in a conversation, you can analyze and all that. A bad film, yes, you can sit and analyze throughout the film. But if it's a good film, then you're truly immersed. And yeah, when I did film that weren't so great, I would be like, oh, I could do that better. That sometimes does happen. But you said my filmography or the directors that I worked with would be an envy for any actor. Frankly, I used to always think, why wasn't I an actor in the 60s with Guru Dutt and Bimal Roy? Or in the 80s when, all these Shyam Benegal and Govind Nihalani and Mrinal Da and all these people were doing it at their prime, and, the kind of roles that Shabana Azmi and Smita Patel and Nasiruddin Shah and Om Puri and, when they did it, I was like, oh, we're the fag end of it, But yeah, if you kind of work that's happening today, which is different and it has its own place and all of that. But yeah, and all this was pre-digital, pre-OTT.
Yeah.
So a lot of the young people have no idea. Like, I remember there was an assistant of mine who was working, and she knew all the complicated meaning, I don't mean to sound judgmental, for us Korean filmmakers and Taiwanese and all the foreign film. Like, she knew all the names, and something came about Govind Nihalani, and it was like, who is he? I was like, you don't know Govind Nihalani? Like, please, tomorrow's task is you will find out what he's directed, what he shot, and who he is. So yeah, that I don't think we have respected our own filmmakers. A lot of the times you don't find those films. Where do you even watch them? Like, I always say that, those experiences, good, bad, ugly, fabulous, all of those were so precious that I wouldn't have traded that for anything else. It's not just the role and what the film said and did, but, the journey of making it was very precious.
Yeah. Like your Adur Gopalakrishnan film, I've been searching for it everywhere, but I really have never been able to find it.
I don't have them, Nala Pennigal, it was stories of four women and I play this spinster.
This one, I just could not find it.
Maybe you should write to him and ask him.
I should. So, Firak, your brilliant first film as a filmmaker, it felt like you were reacting to Gujarat. It was your reaction to Gujarat. Did you ever
to what happened in Gujarat in 2002?
Yes. Did you ever consider making a documentary?
Frankly, no. Because I had seen Rakesh Sharma's Rakesh Sharma, am I saying it right? Final Solution.
Yes.
Yeah. His documentary, I mean, I know him, so if I don't want to mispronounce, so his documentary, it was a very powerful documentary, and I've seen Anand Patwardhan and many other people's documentaries. It requires a different rigor, and maybe because by then I had started acting and started, sort of getting a taste of what a fiction film is like, and also when you come from the intent of wanting to reach, not just wanting to express, but wanting to share, wanting to tell, wanting to, sort of communicate, then I just felt like maybe a fiction would be better because, there are more people who are interested in fiction. There's more liberty you can take in terms of what you really want to say and how. But the first line in Firak is that a work of fiction based on 1,000 true stories.
Yeah.
So I feel that whether it's fiction, whether it's documentary, it's all based on reality and on someone's reality. And they may be a composite character, or they may be, the names are changing, or they could be fictionalized, but they are as real as it gets. Like when you see Manto's stories, today they teach in history classes outside of India, in universities like Ivy League universities, they actually teach Manto, even though it's fiction. Because in a way, it was an account of the partition and the trauma of partition. Right? So, in that sense, Firak was also sort of really taken from all that I read, all that I saw, the many trips I made after the riots were over, to relief camps and refugee camps and meeting people. And so, yeah, and I wasn't trying to either balance, wasn't trying to name call, wasn't trying to do any blame game. I was just trying to see what are the emotions people are grappling with after the obvious violence ends. What lingers on? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it prejudice? Is it emptiness? Is it loss of hope? So for me, those emotions were guiding the stories. So that was and it very organically happened to be an ensemble film. I started with one of the stories of a mixed marriage, a Hindu and a Muslim couple. But then there were all these other stories that I was listening to, the people that I was meeting, and I was like, I can't do justice to this without telling, at least giving a glimpse of that world and those other stories. So it very organically became an ensemble film with 5 different stories.
Yeah, and to handle an ensemble cast, you did that in Firak and Manto as well. But to do it for your first film,
yeah, like I don't think I realized, like in this sense, I just wanted to tell this story.
yeah.
And then when we were actually breaking down the schedule and all of that, I was like, oh my God, you mean one day if we make a mistake, we can't do anything? We're like, no, you can't. Because this location is for only 5 days with these actors. Then we move to this location with these actors, and we move to this location. So we neither have the location for an extra day, nor do we have the actors for an extra day. And I'm like, oh God, why did I choose this?
And to work with Naseeruddin Shah versus Kapil Sharma for Zwigato, does your process also change?
Of course, it has to. Every actor, not just this very deep contrast, but with every actor. Like in Manto, there was Rasika and Nawaz. And Rasika wants more takes because she wants to keep improving. She's never happy with what she's done, and she's such a fine actor.
Yeah.
And then I would tell her, I said, Rasika, this was brilliant. She was like, no, just one more. She's like literally begging for one more. And Nawaz submits to the process much more, and he's like, first, second take, he's like, "Theek hai na?" And then, okay. He's already walked out of the set, and she's like, one more. So, how do you deal with two actors who have different methods, who have different ways? And also, an actor is first a person. So, how do you deal with that human being? And I think being an actor and being on the other side really helped me to communicate better with actors. And at least that's what all actors said. So I'm not trying to be immodest or anything. But the actors said it was like I was able to at least communicate with them. And I think that happened because I had been on the other side. Sometimes directors are not able to tell you what they want. Sometimes they'll say, "Tum apna bachpan yaad karo," and some sad thing. And like, for instance, I don't do all this psychological analysis. So I, in fact, as a filmmaker, I give them more like little props or little actual physicality of things, so that that kind of, if I feel that will help this actor, or give them very pointed specific notes, because most of them are really good actors and how to they will understand where I'm going with it.
Right.
So of course you have to work with every actor differently.
I also talk about the brilliant music of Manto. there was Ustad Zakir Hussain
Yeah, I was very fortunate.
and Sneha Khanwalkar as well.
Yeah, who's
How was that
talented.
collaboration like?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, I was thinking who would be the right person who would understand that era. And, you know, at the time, there was much more of classical music. Even in films, there was so much of classical music. You know, I'm talking about Manto and the 40s. So, somebody who had a very strong base in classical music, but at the same time, you are talking to the people of today. I didn't want any electronic instrument. I wanted only like acoustics and, you know, like real instrument. Who would understand that mix? And I really couldn't think of anyone other than Zakir Bhai. And I sort of just called him up and I told him and I sent him the rough cut, you know, the link of it. And he just said, okay, I'll do it. And I was like, so how much will you charge? Because like, do we even have the budget? I've always worked on very shoestring budgets because it also allows you more freedom. Then they're not sitting on your head because they feel there's less at stake. And he was like, "Ah, jo bhi hoga de dena." Like he didn't even care about, you know, what I was going to give him. And yeah, with Sneha was great fun. She used to live in Bandra at the time, and we would often meet. I would go to her place. You know, she would fiddle around, do things. We would walk on Carter Road with our headphones, and you know, she would say something, then she would sing along, then I would hear it, and I said, "No, but what if that instrument was not there, and what if we did this?" And you know, so I enjoy every aspect of filmmaking, and when I'm doing music, I can't see anything else other than music. Even if I'm doing the subtitles, I can only see the subtitle. I can't see anything else, you know. So every aspect of it is like a different thing. And because I like doing different things, for me, in some sense, filmmaking sort of brings together all my interests because it's not like a one thing, you know. What does a director really do? Most people, yeah, everything, but most people don't know. Like, if something looks really good, it's the cinematographer. If the performances are really good, it's the actor. If the production design is really good, it's the production designer. If the editing is good, it's the editor. So, what does a director do? Kuch nahi karta hai director, you know. So, it's like the closest analogies of a conductor. You know, like if there wasn't a conductor, and imagine all these musicians were just playing their own thing, it would be a cacophony because you wouldn't know how to come together. So in that sense, and because I'm also learning on the job, it's not like I know it. I've learned at least the theory of it, or you know. So I'm involved in every department, and that's what I enjoy, in fact, the most. So yeah, and it's only after Zwigato that I felt I think I really like directing, and this is what I'm going to do, because both Firak and Manto just happened. Like, they weren't a conscious choice. As Manto says that मैं अफसाना नहीं लिखता, अफसाना मुझे लिखता है. So, you know, it was almost like that the Gujarat riots happened and it just sort of stayed with me, and I wanted to tell this story. And then it was released very badly, and I decided I'm never going to direct because it's too much of my emotions are invested in it. And then in 2012, it was a Manto centenary, and I read up so much. Lots was being written about him, and I didn't know so much about it. I only knew his short stories, and I had a whole collection. Maybe it's still here of Dastavez. No, English translations were later, but the Hindi, like in Devanagari, but in his original Urdu.
Okay.
So I had that whole collection, and I had read a few stories, and out of that, actually, there was a story that I really wanted to do as a short film. And it was really in 2012, before it happened, I just felt like this is the film I want to make. I want to celebrate these kind of mavericks. And also I found a lot of similarity with my father. And you know, it's really difficult to be around this deeply feeling, very idealistic, angry with the world mavericks. And my father is so Manto-esque that I felt like maybe I should make a film about Manto. It's also a tribute to my father and to all other Mantos in the world, kind of a thing. So Manto also happened very organically, you know, without me wanting. And again, the same thought came like, oh my God, will I be able to handle this? You know, to recreate that time in Lahore and Bombay, and the city has changed so much. And how do you even do that? So yeah, they were all sort of difficult projects. And Zwigato, I was supposed to be a short film during COVID. And I was trying to put an anthology of 4 directors, and with great difficulty, I managed to get 4 directors, 4 stories. And then one by one, Vikramaditya Motwane, he was the first one to leave the group because Jubilee got greenlit at the time. Then after that, Kiran Rao left because she wanted to work on, I guess, Lapata Ladies at the time. That's another name. So then, I got Konkona and there was Neeraj Ghewan and me and, and then it was just too much because everyone was just going off to their bigger projects and then it was all falling apart. And I was like, what do I do now? And Sameer Nair of Applause, he said, no, make it into a feature film. And I was like, no, this doesn't lend itself to a feature film. I don't know enough about all this algorithm and incentive. I don't want to do it. And it was really him who pushed me and I started writing and I started developing the wife's character and other things that happen in that world. And and slowly it became a feature length film.
Wow. You talk a lot about Mantoyat.
Mantoyat, yeah.
Mantoyat. In today's world where so much is happening around us and there's this digital world which is a whole different ball game, late capitalism, how does one keep Mantoyat alive in today's world in themselves?
There are. The reality is there are Mantos in this world. It's just that we are not shedding this glare and this light on them, which is unfortunate. But that's always been the case, right? Because it comes with the territory. If you're really genuine, if you really want to do something, for the world, for whatever, even if we all are a drop in the ocean anyway. So, but you really want to, you have that sense of commitment, then you're not going to worry about all of this. And in today's world, of course, how much you're on Instagram and, if you're not there, you don't exist. Your visibility matters more. It's not your talent. It's not. So there are superficial things that are happening. There are genuine things also happening. And I think the only way you can keep it is by having strong convictions. If you have the conviction, all of this is not going to tempt you. It's like if you're a vegetarian, if I keep saying this mutton biryani is just outstanding, if you're a vegetarian, it's not going to do anything to you, right? So you have to, so all of this capitalism, consumerism, this, that and the other is for the fragile hearted. If you don't have strong convictions, then you're constantly, I need to pay my bills, yeah, and I need to get this new phone, I need to get a better car, I need to have a watch that, because otherwise no one's going to take me seriously. And it's true also. If you don't have the trappings, they don't take you that seriously. But to be able to not play the game by its rule, not play it at all, if need be, is the difficult part. But if you have convictions, I feel like courage will always follow. You don't have to seek courage. You don't have to say, okay, how do I be strong? I'm going to win over this aspect of my life, or I'm going to fight. There is no fight inside. The people who actually have dedicated their lives, and I know many activists especially, you give them a chance, they will lead this life all over again with all its difficulties and challenges. And I just feel like, oh wow, like how do they do that? And actually the answer is very simple. They have such a deep faith in what they really believe in and what they really want to do, and the sense of purpose, that they don't think about everything. They don't think about the other stuff.
Yeah, that's not the answer. On days when you're not shooting your own film or someone else's film,
which is very often, which is like 90% of my time.
What do you do?
I do so few films. In fact, the gap between my first and second film was 10 years.
10 years, yes.
Between the second and third is 5. And I'm trying to raise funds for my new film. I've finished a script and I'm struggling to raise funds. Also, I've not gone to any studio, so I shouldn't say I've struggled enough because I've not gone to any studio. I'm trying to see whether they will be takers. So if you're watching and if you think you want to participate and in some way support independent cinema, reach out to her. She'll put you in touch with me.
I will. I will.
No, but seriously, I feel like, sorry, what was your question?
What do you do on the...
What do I do? Well, I don't know. Time just goes. Like every day is a different day. I do a lot of social advocacy work. So I speak at various forums and, often for NGOs also, for conferences also, in colleges and schools. And I do workshops and things. I also go to my son's school. He's in a wonderful boarding school called Sahyadri, which is near Pune. Again, a J. Krishnamurti school, the same people who run Rishi Valley and stuff like that. So I go and teach there also. I take classes there. It's my excuse to go and be with my son a little longer. But more than that, I also actually enjoy being with children, being with teachers, talking to teachers, understanding more about education. And how do we raise more sensitive and secure children? Like you were saying, that how do we keep our hearts in place with all these other temptations or distractions? It's the same for children. And if you put that right amount of khad and the water and the sun to that little plant, then you go right. So I do that, and I write. So like I was writing my own script. No, I have no routine. I wish I did. My parents also now in their 80s. I often go to Delhi, and so there are lots of little things that I do.
And what about your reading and film watching habits?
Very bad.
Well, you read a lot.
I used to.
Oh,
I couldn't sleep without reading. But I have to confess, my reading has gone down phenomenally. And and I think mind is too cluttered always. I don't know why. Like when I'm traveling, I think I read a little more. But like if I read a long form article, I feel like I've done my reading for today, which is terrible. So there are lots of the books, especially on top, are the ones I want to read. Some of these are just old books that have come from their
fictions.
And I don't know what that is. Yeah, few things here and there. Some friends' books, some other books, some that I want to have. I'm sort of not going to a bookstore because I know if I go, there are books that I want to get. I was like, no, first let me read what I have, and then I'll get. So yeah, and watching also. I want to watch a lot more. But I don't watch. I very rarely watch, which is terrible. I'm still sort of very old school. I love watching in a theater and in that collective experience of watching together and in a dark room with no distractions, with no phones ringing, nobody calling and all of that. So when I go to festivals, I end up watching a lot. And you also watch films that you would never end up watching here.
Yeah.
So I was the president of this jury in El Guna, which is a festival in the Middle East. And of course, I had to watch every film there. And, it was just so interesting. And then deliberating with all the jurors and all. So there I would watch. Or even as a filmmaker, as an actor, if I go anywhere, I would watch lots of other films. So yeah, but I'm slowly trying to increase the habit of switching on. I didn't have a television for 7 years. And then my son said that I cannot watch IPL on this laptop of yours. Like, please get it. So we got it last year and I still don't use it. So every time he tells me, he says, Mama, I hope you're using it. Like, it'll get spoiled if you only use it when I come. So yeah, he's going to come back next year for next year.
Films.
So I should use it. But it's just too much effort. Uska cover nikalo, remote. All these remotes have become so complicated and so I know I sound ancient, but I do want to watch and I do want to read. So I'm committing and you're the witness that I shall do more of it.
Yes. Last question, and I'll not ask you favorites, but do you have any films?
Please don't ask me favorites. No, I don't have favorites.
Any films or books or lines of poetry that you keep returning to? Or music that's always a part of your playlist?
Yeah, like all of it, I would say. I mean, there are always favorite films, whether you take it in India, like the Oppu trilogy or, like Truffaut's 400 Blows or, Taste of Cherry by Abbas Kiarostami. And there's so many films. I mean, I could, there are lots of films that are really wonderful. In terms of music, I mean, I still am used to listening to Hindustani classical music. That's the music I grew up with.
Vocal or instrumental?
Vocal. I like vocal.
Who do you listen to the most?
Kumar Gandharv and Rashid Khan, Kishori Amankar, Bhimsen Joshi, whatever, Mallikarjun Mansoor, a lot of people.
That's right.
So I listen to music, but I also now listen to ghazals.
Yeah.
Like Farida Khanum and Abida Parveen and Mehdi Hassan and all of that. Sometimes old Hindi film songs of the 50s and the 60s. Sometimes jazz. Sometimes blues. But I grew up more with Indian music. So I listen to Indian music more. But I also like Beatles and, Garfunkel and all of that as well. Yeah. What else did you ask me?
No, that's it.
Okay, so yeah, now you know enough about
Yes.
me, and yeah, you're going to let me go after this.
I will.
I'm working on my script.
Yes, please tell us
Which I
about it.
Oh, it's a relationship film. It's a very small, I think my most personal and the smallest film that I've done. You know, what is small? I don't know what small is. Like, budgets don't decide the heart of a film. So,
Is it a short?
no, it's a full-on feature film, but it's about relationships, about marriage, separation. Having been there, done that, I feel like I have some authority to talk about it. But it's not autobiographical. There is, of course, parts of me are there, and it's inevitable. Actually, it's always inevitable in every film. But this being more personal, I think there's maybe a little more. But it's also everything that I've observed and everything that I've seen all around me and witnessed all around me. And it's neither trying to romanticize marriage or vilify it. It's just sort of unpacking what it is. What are those subtle inequalities between equals, especially when there is a marriage of choice? And so I'm exploring that, and I'm trying to find people who care about this story and these kind of stories to come together and make it so that we have more freedom in the way we market, we distribute, we tell it, without any other pressure. So yeah, that's
Looking
the
forward
phase I'm
watching it.
But it's still a long way. But
All the best.
thank you. Thanks. I need all the luck I can.
Yeah, you will have it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.